turn your passion into a career. Now, I feel like these words, I hear them all too often, and as someone that has done something similar in the past, on more than one occasion, might I add, turned a passion, a hobby into a career or job, we could say, I thought I would be a good person to give my take on why that's something you shouldn't do. So, why you shouldn't turn a passion or a hobby into a career. Now, before we go any further, I think we need to define a few things here. That being passion and hobby, and career and job. Now, a passion or a hobby, it's something which you do in your free time because you enjoy doing it. You freely choose to spend your spare time doing it, working towards it, learning it, getting better in it. It's something that you're not forced to do in any way whatsoever. You willingly choose to pursue it. Now, the major difference between hobby and passion, I'd say it being the intensity between the two. A passion is at a higher intensity than something that would just be considered a hobby, and maybe a few smaller things as well go into it, with it being a passion rather than a hobby. Now, a career or a job, that's something which you don't necessarily choose to do it in your free time. You're doing it because it helps you make a means of income. A career is a means to live your life, or we could say just pay your bills, because when you break it down into its base form, life is pretty much just a series of bills. And actually, when you put it like that, it does sound kind of depressing, doesn't it? So now that we've defined those words, passion, a hobby, and a career job, I think we can get into why you shouldn't turn one into the other, or I'd say connect them, because when you're connecting them so closely to one another, your passion or hobby to your job and career, there is a setback that can happen that a lot of people, they aren't all that aware of. So let me go ahead and paint a picture here for you. So let's say you enjoy baking. That's something you love doing, and your friend suggests to you one day, hey, why don't you make this your career? You like baking. Why don't you bake things and sell them to people? Now, remember, you're connecting these two things quite closely. They're no longer separate. They're now super close. They're right on top of each other. Now, because of that, let's say you start baking and they buy your products. No one buys your cakes that you're baking. You bake cakes. Now, you're no longer going to be able to pay your bills, and that can cause a problem, because since you're no longer able to pay your bills because you went head first into this and you thought things would work out, they'd be great, you'd make money because the people in your life, your friends, really enjoy it, and all of a sudden complete strangers aren't really interested in your product. Well, because this is your passion, your hobby, that you're infusing with a job, a career, well, you can actually start to dislike baking. You can become quite bitter about it. You could be like, I'm spending this time making these things, and people aren't interested in it. They don't want to pay money in order to buy this thing, which I've worked on for years. I've spent so much time working on perfecting. It's a hobby. It's a passion. It's my love. Something that I enjoy doing with my entire being, and people just don't seem to be interested in it. Because that is your passion, your hobby, and all of a sudden, as a career, it's not doing so well, you can actually end up ruining your love for what it is that you're doing, which is, in this case, baking cakes. So that's a major thing. A lot of people they completely overlook. I think it doesn't even cross their mind that something like that can happen, but that is a possibility. You could potentially ruin your hobby, your passion, which you love. You can end up ruining that, and having it be something which you may never want to do again, because when you try turning it into a career, it didn't turn out so well. So that's something to keep in mind, and a potential reason as to why you should not turn your passion into a career. Now, don't get me wrong, tons of people have turned their passion into a career, and they still enjoy it. Of course, when you do turn it into a career, you have to remember that things change quite a bit, because you're connecting something which you enjoy, which you love doing. You're connecting that to something which you're doing simply in order to make a living and pay the bills. And because of that, well, the career aspect of it will influence the hobby and passion aspect of it, because the career aspect, you're doing it and you're expecting a return. You need there to be a return, actually. You're not just expecting it. You need there to be a return. When you're doing it as a passion or hobby, you don't necessarily need a return, because you're getting a sort of personal fulfillment out of it. So that's something to keep in mind, and why you shouldn't turn a hobby or a passion into a career. If you appreciated the video, I'd appreciate it if you could leave a like and maybe consider a sub. Alright, until next time.